Welcome to the session of training regarding subject to distribution open access regulation and procedure. This session is being organized on request for all the employees of MSc DCL by various training centers in Maharashtra. So now in detail, we are going to discuss what is open access regulation and how it is very different than the rest of the regulations which have been going on. So first of all, why open access policy, open access regulation has gained a lot of importance. We will see, first of all, recently by Ministry of Power, Government of India, one rules are being put forwarded regarding specifically regarding renewable energy and open access. That rules are electricity promoting renewable energy through green energy open access rules 2022. In these rules, now these rules will take certain time to get converted into regulation. But by putting forward these rules by central ministry, open access regulations in all the states of country has gained a lot of importance, and it is mandatory to get in-depth knowledge of what is open access regulation. So on the same lines, the Ministry of Power, Government of India has forwarded a proposed amendment in the Electricity Act 2003, in which specifically open access policy has been mentioned. In detail, we will see what is regarding that. On the same lines, the third most important aspect with respect to open access regulation is the KUSUM C component put forwarded by Government of India, MNRE, Ministry for New and Renewable Energy. In that KUSUM C scheme, specifically the scheme is for farmers, and the scheme is related with the solar federalization, in which subsidy is also available for megawatt level projects of solar. And in this scheme, KUSUM C, sale of excess generation can be done by a developer or a farmer in open market, excess generation. So as this scheme is being implemented in the rural parts of most of the states and also in Maharashtra, it is mandatory for all the employees of MSc DCL to get acquainted with what is open access regulation in depth, so that they can take awareness programs. They can make all the farmers in rural parts, those who are interested to get involved in such schemes, megawatt level schemes, that how this scheme is been beneficial for sale of excess generation from that megawatt level project. So in this way, as I told that the Electricity Act Amendment Bill is been put forwarded, and in this bill some proposed amendments are being done regarding open access that we will see in fast. So particularly in this proposal, the things which are being dropped out is delicensing of distribution business. But on the same lines, the things which are being added is that choice to consumers through multiple distribution licensee is been added, is been modified. And on the same lines, it is been made mandatory that non-discriminatory open access to other distribution licenses in the same area of supply. It is made mandatory that if there are multiple distribution licenses in a particular area or circle or zone or a state, it will be mandatory to have a open access policy to be to other distribution licenses in the same area of supply. So with respect to promotions of renewable energy and how these promotions and propagations of renewable energy are related with open access regulation, that is also been mentioned in this proposed bill. We can see that RPO, trajectory of RPO by Government of India has been highlighted, and the penalties for non-compliance of RPO are also been mentioned. So there is a lot of importance been gained regarding RE policies and open access regulation related with that. So now, before coming to the procedures, we will take in short what is the definition of open access. So according to section 2 of 47 Electricity Act 2003, the definition of open access is that a non-discriminatory provision for the use of transmission line or distribution system or associate facilities with such lines or systems. Means any consumer can use the existing transmission lines or distribution system or associate facilities in any licensee, by any licensee or consumer or a person engaged in generation in accordance with the regulations specified by the appropriate commissions. Means a consumer can avail open access energy by using the transmission and distribution system of an existing distribution licensee. And as per the commission's guidelines, the consumer can pay wheeling charge, wheeling loss, transmission charge, transmission losses, and he can avail the facility of that lines, transmission lines and distribution systems by paying the charges along with subsidies and cross subsidies and additional surcharge. And he can avail open access energy from the open market. This is the main definition of open access as per Act. So in this way, why this open access regulation has been made mandatory and has gained importance as per national electricity policy and as per national tariff policy. We will see in fast what are the objectives for putting forward this open access energy in front of all. So the basic objectives of national electricity policy is to increase the competition in the sector. The second one is to reduce the AT&C losses. Third one is providing quality power supply to the consumers. Fourth one is substantial improvement in quality of supply. And the last one is a self-sustaining sector to attract investment in all the areas. So in this way, the objectives of open access for consumers are being forwarded as per the national electricity policy and national tariff policy. So in details now we will go. What are the sections governing open access regulation as per Act 2003? There are certain sections, as we can see over here, which are very, very important to be learned in details, such as captive generation, functions of CTU, central transmission utility, state transmission utility functions, what are the wheeling charges, what are the additional surcharges, how we have to get these charges from the consumers who are ready to get open access energy from the open market, and also the functions of the state commission as per section 86(1) of C. It's also a very important section. So in detail, we will go through this, all the sections, how it affects and what are the important aspects of it. So in this way, specifically the structure of open access, what we can say, it is divided into two parts. One is for interstate and another is the intra. As we all know, the interstate means the consumers who want to avail open access energy from out of the state, and for intrastate is the consumers who wants to avail open access energy within a state. Open access power within a state is what called intrastate. And there are three parts of open access. One is the short term, the second one is medium term open access, and the third one is long term. How these are going to affect and what are its challenges we are going to see further. So as we have seen that the short-term open access permission is given to the consumer is only for 1 month, and for medium term, it must exceed more than 3 months to 5 years, not more than 5 years. And for long-term open access permission to consumer, it must exist more than 7 years. So in this way, what are the nodal agencies involved in open access permissions, regulations, approvals? So in this slide, we can see over here that regional load dispatch center and state load dispatch centers are playing a vital role in giving the permissions of open access specifically for inter uh, interstate permissions. And as power exchange, as we know that power exchange, that is Indian Energy Exchange, PXIL Power Exchange India Limited, and the recently new exchange has been launched by a ministry, central ministry, that is Hindustan Exchange, Power Exchange, which was previously called as a, we can say, Paramurja. So all these exchange, through this exchange, any licensee or any consumer or any generator or any consumer can have a transaction of open access energy through this exchange platform, which are been called as a day ahead market and term ahead markets also. So yeah, through power exchange, we are also going to see in depth how the open access regulation works. So in this way, as I have told that there are two types for interstate and intrastate. There are two types of open access regulation. On the same way, the types of transactions for open access regulation is bilateral transaction one is, and the second one is collective transaction. Bilateral transactions mean there is a specified buyer and a specified seller, and in a collective transaction, the open access energy is being availed through exchange. That is what called collective transactions. Now the procedures what we are going to see over here in today's session, and the important aspects regarding the procedures what we are going to see over here is regarding the eligibility to seek open access, specifically for our engineers on the field. Also regarding how the revision is contract demand is being done while applying for open access permissions by the consumers. These are some of the basics things, like network congestion is what is the network congestion concept, how the scheduling of power is being done, regarding the applicable charges, everything we are going to study in detail. So this procedure is already been mentioned in Mahadiscom site, on the Mahadiscom site, procedure, open access procedure. So before going for procedures, we will have a fast look on when was this open access regulation put forwarded by Regulatory Commission in Maharashtra. So as per MERC, existing distribution of open access regulation was launched on 2016, and it was amended in 2019, what we are now implementing. So these are the basics. And now, as we have seen that there are three types of open access permissions. Along with that, day-ahead open access is also gaining a lot of importance, as specifically in MSDCL, real-time market portfolio has been started at head office level, power purchase cell, and through that day ahead and term ahead open access permissions, we are gaining energy through open market, through power exchange. How it works, that is also we are going to see in depth. So basically, when a consumer wants to seek power from open access regulation, what are the basic eligibility criteria, that we are going to see in details. As we have seen over here, the open access for obtaining supply of electricity from a generating company or a captive power plant, or from a distribution licensee other than MSDCL, or from power exchange or trader, and any other combination thereof can take permission, can be eligible to seek open access power. So on the same lines, the basic eligibility criteria for open access energy is that the contract demand of the consumer must be 1 megawatt and above. On the same lines, there are two types of permissions being given, that is partial open access, and the another one is full open access. Practically, we will see by studying one of the bill of consumers, what is partial and what is full open access. At that time, you will get the detailed idea of that. Accordingly, also, while giving the permissions, the resultant power flow, what is the capacity of the transformer of that consumer, high tension consumer? That is also a very important aspect while giving the permissions. That is what called resultant power flow. This is also one of the important aspects. Regarding metering and all that, we are going to take detail further slides. So maximum demand is the major aspect while giving the permissions of the open access regulation. So accordingly, it has also been told in this procedure that the distribution license franchisee shall not be eligible for seeking open access. This is one of the major aspects of open access regulation 2019 amended. Accordingly, very important aspect regarding net metering and rooftop solar photovoltaic system, it has been mentioned in this amendment that there is a lot of confusion on the fields that if consumer, high tension consumer is already having a net metering connection, rooftop solar, then whether he can avail open access energy beyond 1 megawatt through open market, yeah, he can avail. But that net metering procedure, that net metering billing will be converted into a gross metering. This is the major aspects of this open access regulation. Lot of confusions are being done regarding the net metering regulation and open access regulation. Both the regulations are quite different, and confusions are been done regarding the same in the billing. How that confusions are being done, we will see further. But once the open access permission is been sought by high tension consumers, then that if he is having net metering billing system, that will be converted into gross metering. We have to keep in mind, specifically for RE projects. On the same lines, as we all know that there must not be any dues of the consumer if we want to seek open access energy. This is the basic criteria. On the same line, if any disputes are been going on or a court matters, as we all know that maximum public water works connections in rural parts of Maharashtra, public water work connections have a lot of areas, and many Nagar Palika, Nagar Panchayat, municipal corporations are coming forward to take solar projects for such public water works. On that sense, we can see over here that certain deposit of the disputed amount can be taken from the consumer, and then under section 56 of Electricity Act 2003, eligible open access permission can be given to such consumers. This has also been mentioned over here. On the same lines, permission will not be granted to the consumer availing single point supply and sub-distributing it further to multiple consumers. That is commercial malls, IT parks, commercial complexes, software technology parks. As we know that certain cases are being coming across in metropolitan cities, like specifically like Nagpur, Mumbai, Nasik and Pune. So for them, this is the major aspect that open access will not be granted to the consumer availing single point supply and sub-distributing it further to multiple consumers. So in this way, the third part regarding eligibility is that as we know that the conventional or RE generators from whom the consumer is intended to source power supply through open access has already entered into a long-term power purchase agreement with MSEDCL or any licensor, then such consumer who is already involved in open access will not be eligible to get permission for open access in such cases. Double, he cannot get the permission. This is the major part. And the second one is if the consumer has cancelled his existing medium-term open access permission and applied for short-term for the same generation location, then the consumer has to provide the cancellation letter issued by MSEDCL. This is the major part regarding the permission and to get changeover from medium-term to short-term. On the same lines, as we have seen that the revision in contract demand is one of the major aspects in giving permissions of open access. So the consumer availing short-term open access shall not be eligible to revise his contract demand. But if he wants to avail through medium term or long term, he has to revise his contract demand, but it is not mandatory for a short-term open access consumer to revise his contract demand. But conventional consumers availing short-term, mid-term, or long-term who do not opt for reduction in contract demand up to open access capacity, such consumers have a particular trajectory of notional contract demand. It has been given in detail in the procedure on the site also. You can go through that. So regarding the time frame for submission of online open access application, it is as good as the SOPs what we have. So accordingly, these are the deadlines for midterm, short term, and day ahead. In midterm, long term, we have to submit the application shall be submitted prior to 6 months from intended date. For midterm, there is a 3 month, and the application for short term must be made 4 months prior to the month of short term open access, but not later than the 10th day of proceeding month. And for day ahead, as we have seen that real-time market and all that has been already started at head office level, and also the contingency day ahead is also one of the provision in that the application shall be submitted by the consumer only 1 day prior to the date of scheduling. This is not only applicable to the consumer, it is also been applicable for discoms also, licensee also, if they want to transact open access energy through open market, specifically the day ahead and contingency day ahead. So all this has been procedures have been available on www.mahadiscom.in. Regarding the enclosures, the following documents are required to be uploaded online, as there is already available that some self-certified copies are being required for the buyers and sellers. Everything is being provided. What will be the period of withdrawal and injection? Everything has been mentioned in this enclosure. You can go through the site. Regarding what will be the power purchase agreements between the open access consumer and the generator or the trader is also been provided in these enclosures. Now we can see the latest ST connection monthly energy bill last 3 months for open access consumer is also essential to be uploaded. Regarding the metering, CTPT report issued by SC testing and SC&M circle office is mandatory to be enclosed. On the same lines, no due certificate, as we have already discussed, reduction in contract demand, techno-commercial report issued by concerned O&M, all are very important. In case of multiple generators, permission regarding same shall be mentioned in Annexure 3 with details. Annexures are also been provided. We can go through that. Documents regarding the RPO, renewable power obligation compliance, are also very mandatory to be get enclosed for the permissions. So in this way, captive generating plants is also gaining a lot of importance nowadays. Most of the high tension consumers are aligned towards the captive generation plant. In that, it has been said that the power economics calculated by the consumer while availing power from captive generation plant comes less than the tariff of MSC DCL or the state discom. It has been said. So in this specifically captive generation plant, 100% ownership or equity shareholding is to be enclosed by the consumer, and the specific criteria is over in the captive generation plant is that more than 51% of the generated power shall be self-consumed by that client or consumer is the major points to be highlighted over here for the captive generation plant specifically. Regarding the power exchange, purchase of power from power exchange through open access regulation, there is mandatory things that the registration, membership details of the power exchange must be there. Member client agreement is also important. Memorandum of understanding for PPA between consumer and traders is also an important aspect. Some NOCs and permissions are also regarding commission certificate to avail power from open exchange for consumers and generators. So in this way, the processing times is been already mentioned in the procedures for what will be the processing time for day ahead, contingency day ahead, short term, mid term, and long term. So specifically for medium term open access permission, the processing time must be within 60 days. It is very important if the system augmentation is not required. If the augmentation of a distribution transmission system is required, then the consent will be issued within 180 days, subject to the condition that the midterm open access shall commence within 6 months of issuance of such consent. I am highlighting over here that maximum permissions are being given through medium term open access only. So that's why it's very important to be get discussed. So on the same lines, if the consumer wants to avail permission through interstate, on that aspect, the consumer shall submit the necessary permissions from state load dispatch center, state transmission utility, regional load dispatch centers, power exchanges. This is the major part to be discussed over here in the procedure. Regarding energy accounting and billing, as we know that availability based tariff ABT meters are compulsory. Special energy meters, in that 15 minutes generation data is to be set off against 15-minute consumption on the day ahead basis only. Open access consumer shall be allowed credit of energy at drawal point after deduction of applicable losses. And specifically the generation credit units after deduction of applicable loss to the energy injected in the MSDCL grid shall be adjusted set off with the consumption in the corresponding 15 time blocks only. As we know that in net metering regulation, the set off has been carried forward month to month, and at the end of year, the whatever units are been in the bank that has been credited. But in the open access regulation, such things doesn't happen. The set off is to be given against particular units in that month only. It is not been forwarded in the next month. This is the major aspect over here. In case of underdrawal by open access consumer, the power sourcing conventional generator, open access consumer shall not be paid any charges by the distribution licensee. The over injected units will be lapsed. What I want to say over here. That point is again discussed in detail that the banking of energy shall be permitted only on monthly basis. This is the major difference between the net metering regulation and the open access regulation. So in this way, these are the slots A, B, C, D. As we know that time of the day tariff, we know that we have a peak slots, off-peak slots. We have a morning peak and evening peak. So in this chart, the major thing we can see over here that as the meter is been what used for open access permissions and open access consumer is availability based tariff meter. In that, as per the timing, the slots are being divided. And now as the 15 minutes time slot period is being divided per hourly, means there are 4 slots in a 1 hour. And for 24 hours, you can see over here that 96 slots are being divided accordingly for 24 hours. And the important thing over here is that the evening peak, that is D slot, evening peak we have from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. that is 18 to 22. This evening peak plays a major role while at the time of billing of the open access consumer specifically, and how it affects specifically for solar consumers, solar open access consumers, we are going to study in depth. So likewise, the unutilized bank energy at the end of month. So in the month of March, if some unutilized bank energy is there, or in any month, that limited to 10% of actual total generation by such RE generators in such month is to be purchased at the rate equivalent to that stipulated under yearly generic RE tariff order. Generic tariff order, we at present, we have a 2.83 rupees of generic tariff for MSDCL. So whatever unutilized bank energy is there at the end of each month, that is mandatory for DISCOMs to take 10% of the actual total generation by such RE generators in such month to be purchased at the rate equivalent to stipulated under yearly generic tariff. So in net metering, such things doesn't happen. In net metering, at the end of the year, we get credit of the banked energies. But in open access regulation, in each month, the banking energy has been given credit accordingly only. Consumer shall submit to Mahadiscom the contact details regarding mobile number, fax numbers, and everyday email address, and has to coordinate with the scheduling and operational coordination officer at Mahadiscom accordingly. These are the such details regarding the officers of scheduling process. Scheduling process is also gaining a lot of importance, as we all know that electricity grid code regulation, deviation settlement mechanism regulation, scheduling and forecasting is also gaining a lot of importance in the coming future. As we all know that Electricity Act Amendment Bill is going to be put forwarded. Also, the rules are put forwarded, open access rules, and some KUSUM schemes are there. So it is very, very important and mandatory to have a knowledge of what is electricity grid code regulation. So regarding deviation settlement mechanism and electricity grid code, we are also going to see in fast how it works and all that regarding scheduling of power. Now, as we are told that what will be the applicable charges if a consumer wants to avail energy from open market by taking by using our transmission lines and distribution system. So these are the charges the consumer has to pay, and he can avail open access energy through market by paying such charges to DISCOMs, local distribution licenses. There are cross subsidy surcharge, additional surcharge, standby charges, operating charges, and any other charges or some recoverable. So specifically for renewable generators, those consumers who want to avail RE power, renewable power, in that case, the cross subsidy surcharge and additional surcharge are not being taken into account. In details also, we are going to see how it will work for conventional and non-conventional. So in this way, there are certain billing procedures for particular meters like Elsters and Elsters make ABT meter and Valaby, how the metering MD quadrants are being built, we will see in fast in detail. So before coming to billing section, I would like to highlight what is ABT, availability based tariff structure mechanism regarding fixed charges and variable charges. So the total fixed cost payable to generator over the year is linked to the average annual availability, hence the name ABT, availability based tariff. In that, variable charges are also they are charged to the beneficiaries to the extent of their drawal schedule. So now we will see what is overdraw, underdraw, what is unscheduled interchange. These are the major aspects which affects the billing of open access consumer. So what is unscheduled interchange? These are all the parameters, trajectories mentioned in grid code regulation, deviation settlement mechanism. And for studying in depth of open access energy, unscheduled interchange basics, you must know. What is unscheduled interchange? It is the difference of actual generation and scheduled generation. From generator point of view, and for beneficiary, it is total actual draw and total scheduled draw. No doubt, from beneficiary point of view, it will be a draw, and it will work on 15 minutes time slot period. So accordingly, for overdraw under a low frequency will be a penalty for a consumer, and for over injection or underdraw under high frequency will be a low reward for the consumer. But regarding overdraw and under injection under high frequency, it will be a nil or a low penalty for a consumer or a generator, and over injection and underdraw for low frequency, it will be reward. So from this, you will not get what I want to say, but by getting actual bill, I will try to make understand you how the open access bill is going to be read. So these are some of the trajectories of under induction and over injections you can go through for high frequencies, low frequencies, and how this frequency varies and how the consumer get benefits and penalties in billing we are going to see in detail. So this is one of the bill of high tension open access consumer. Here you can see in when we fetch data from the meter, we get these details. In that details, here we can see there is a frequency 50, 49.97, 50.01, 49.90, 49.94 of a consumer. And this data is being matched with the generator data, generator meter, generator frequency, whether this frequency matches or not, whether the actual injection and actual draw get coordinated or not. This all system is being done through IT department, and this data is being matched. And if there is any difference in the frequencies of the generator and the fetching what the client or consumer is drawing and what the generator is been injecting, if there is a difference, so such differences are being calculated under unscheduled interchange. And you will see if there is any deviation in the frequency from 0.01 hertz steps in equivalent to 35.60 paisa per kilowatt per unit frequency is being charged. If any deviation from 50.05 to 50 hertz, and same if the frequency goes below 49.70, there is a certain UI charges. In detail we will see. Here are certain UI rates, unscheduled interchange rates for average frequency of time blocks. Here we can say that if the frequency goes below 50, 49.99, 4.98, so accordingly the charges for deviation also increases. And the last slab is if the frequency of a generator or a consumer goes beyond 49.70, then 8 rupees 24 paisa is the highest UI unscheduled interchange rate to be get record from the particular consumer. So this is one of the bill we can see over here. In this bill here, you can see the CD non-conventional solar type over here. This is a partial open access consumer. And in this open access bill, you can see total draw units, total injection units, units at MSC tariff, units at temporary tariff, and offset units and over-injected units. And here are the ABCD zones of MSC time of the day, ABT meter, availability based tariff meter zones. So friends, you can see over here, the total draw units are more than total injection units. Means the consumer has taken imported more units from our system, and the generator with which he has done the agreement for open access, the total injection unit by the generator is less. So in such cases, the zone wise, what we can we have discussed previously, that the D zone cannot come in picture, because directly it can be billed on MSC diesel tariff as consumer has taken import units more than the export units what the generator has been injected. So in this case, the regular billing will be done as the total injection units, means export units will be totally offset against this total draw. No issue in that, and regular billing will be done. But if the total draw is less than the total injection, this is the another case of open access consumer. Here we can see the total drawn units are less than the total injection units. In such case, the D zone unit, that is peak slot, will come into picture. While giving the compensation of unit to unit, at that time what we do, whatever injection is units are being injected by the generator, that we will reduce from the D zone units, that is 28,729 will be deducted from this total injection units. And after that, after injecting units, we will have calculations of what we have to give the bill. So here we can see that from the total drawl units, if we minimize this 28,729 out of 167,122, we will get the offset units. And these offset units, when deducted from the total injection units, that units are called over injected units, and no reverse or no compensations will be given to that consumer. These over injected units are lapsed, as we have seen in the regulation. These are the simple fundamentals of open access regulation for specifically for billing. Again, I am saying the total import units, what the consumer has availed, that open units will not be get unit to unit for total injection, as the total injection by the generator is higher. So what we will do, what we will minimize the D zone units from the total draw, and it will be offset unit, and that offset unit will be minimized from total injection units, and it will be a over injected units. Okay. So in this way, the second part of the billing is bill for MSCDCL consumption and bill for open access consumers. Here we can see, as this open access consumer is regarding renewable energy, solar. No, you can see over here, this is additional surcharge and cross subsidy surcharge are not been billed, as we have already seen that both the surcharges are been not applicable for RE consumers, open access consumers over here. So this is the type of open access bill. So these are some of the open access charges we have to implement when the consumer goes through a conventional or non-conventional or through power exchange. These are some of the open access charges. This is available on the site. These are the cross subsidy surcharge we get from the conventional source open access consumers, that is from coal and all. So these are the cross subsidy surcharge rates. Accordingly, what are the wheeling additional surcharge, wheeling charges, transmission charges? These are also been given. These are been calculated at the time of billing. These charges are very important from consumer aspect. When he calculates the economics of that energy, these rates are very important from consumer point of view. When he whether his project, captive project, will be financial viable or not. At that time, while calculating power economics, consumer requires all these charges, and he can get a figure so that the project will be financial or not, financial viable or not with respect to MSCDCL tariff or not. He can judge from these rates. So some of the important circulars from head office MSCDCL are being put forwarded by the testing team. The one of the circular is regarding the revised guidelines for metering in respect of HT, EHV, and open access consumers. In this circular, specifically for express feeders, substation and metering, the guidelines are being given regarding metering room, regarding isolation before metering. You can go in detail through this, and in that specifically, what will be the ratio, what will be the class for the open access consumer specifically. You can see here that the CTs must be of 0.2 class, 0.2 S specifically for open access consumers, and from generator point of view, it must all CT must be also of 0.2 S, and the PT must be of 0.2 class. An ABT meter of 4 quadrant import export meter is mandatory for the open access consumers. The details are being given over here. And on the same lines, one circular on all the rooftop solar generation projects, all ST consumers, those who want to avail a rooftop solar net metering, specifically net metering, for them also availability based tariff meters are being made mandatory, specifically for net meters also. So this is one of the circular, and in that also it has been mentioned that forecasting, scheduling, and deviation settlement of solar and wind generation regulation 2018 and amended procedure provided by commission thereof is also been mentioned. Just you have to go through that in details. So in this way, a comparative analysis of high tension feeder, industrial HT feeder for industries is been made over here for 11 kV level at 33 kV and 66 kV. As I told that the power economics is plays a very major role from consumer point of view, whether the project will be financial viable or not, whether to avail the energy from open access will be a good deal or not. So from consumer point of view, these are the some of the important trajectories. And for us also, from study point of view, we must be aware how these wheeling losses, transmission losses, regional losses are being calculated specifically at exchange level, and what will be the landed cost for discoms, for licensees, when discom or licensee avails open access energy from exchange, and this has to be compared with the average cost of supply and the average power procurement cost for the further comparison, so that uh, we can have a less difference of average cost of supply and average revenue realization. It has been nowadays it is been told that for discoms, AT&C losses and distribution losses must be in limit, but with respect to average cost of difference of average cost of supply and average revenue realization, the difference must not be more than 50 paisa is a major challenge behind before all the discoms throughout the states. So in this way, these are the highlights of the new rules which are being put forwarded by the central ministry regarding renewable energy through green energy open access rules 2022. So this is one of the challenging rules in front of us. In this specifically, certain terms are being highlighted, just as there will be no capacity limit for installing power plant for RE sources. Uh, RE energy can be procured through open access for any developer, either directly or through trading licensee or power markets. These are some of the highlights of these rules 2022. And the major thing over here is that now open access regulation is for 1 megawatt and above consumers. Now, due to these rules, 100 kilowatt and more having a consumer having a contract demand may opt energy from open access once this rule will be converted into regulation. It will take a time, but once this rule get into regulation, then this will be a major challenge in front of all discoms and all employees, that the 100 kilowatt and above consumer, how to give permissions to them and how to manage all those things. At that time, this study will gain a lot of importance for open access regulation. So accordingly, as I told that RPO compliance and regulation will also gain an importance, renewable purchase obligation. This is also been mentioned in these rules. Green hydrogen and green ammonia will also gain an importance regarding captive power projects. Applications 15 within 15 days, we have to proceed through nodal agency when as the rules has been mentioned. Some of the as we have studied that 15 minutes time slot period is there. Now in this rule, it has been mentioned that the 12 time block will be necessary. That is 3 to 4 hours will be necessary to maintain the contract demand of a particular open access consumer. Now centralized registry, open access registry is also been formed in the month of May 2022. And through open access registry, central open access registry, all the applications of specifically short-term procedures will be monitored through central only, through open access registries, central open access registry. Accordingly, these are the some of the terms highlighted in these rules. We have to you can go through in details through the regulation by reading the rules. So in this way, a lot of things in these rules are similar to our open access Maharashtra open access regulation 2019, and all the banking and everything are very similar. We are proactively in Maharashtra. We are proactively already implementing maximum points which are been mentioned in these rules. So regarding cross subsidy and cross subsidy surcharge and all that, whether to avail additional surcharge from open access consumers or not, waste to energy plant will also gain importance in future. Green hydrogen and green ammonia will also gain a lot of importance in the future with respect to open access energy. As in this rule is been mentioned that the green certificates will be issued. Already in Maharashtra, we have a green tariff. If any consumer wants to avail 100% green energy for his consumption, then we already have a green tariff that if a consumer pays 66 paisa more with the existing tariff, then the licensee, distribution licensee or DISCOM can give a certificate to the consumer that the power which is being supplied to the premises of that consumer is of 100% green energy. Certification can be done. This is already we have in our state. So in this way, these are the procedures, some of the procedures will be mentioned in these rules. And in last but not the least, I will like to thanks specifically Engineer Nitin Pevekar sir, Executive Engineer from Training Center Kalyan, who has requested me to have a session on open access regulation. And if anybody is having questions and answers regarding the same after listening to this session, if anybody having any doubts, you can directly call me, or Pevekar sir is going to arrange a question and answer sessions for the same. Thank you so much.